I'm here with Ciyadh Wells, who is a classical guitarist, educator, and activist based in Austin, Texas. She's currently pursuing her doctorate in guitar performance at the University of Georgia. She's the founder of the Martian's Guitar Collective and is passionate about bringing attention to women and non-binary composers for the classical guitar. Ciyadh, thanks so much for sitting down to chat with me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Ben.
So what's your routine like at the moment, given everything, the pandemic and stay-at-home orders and all of that?
Yeah, so currently my routine is probably like most anyone else's. I have the great fortune of working from home, and I spend the normal kind of working hours doing that job where I work in development for a nonprofit, and then after that, I immediately start practicing and get to all of the other things. The real work that I enjoy doing. So, like I said, it involves practicing. It involves some administrative work with the various projects. Sometimes it involves recording, reading, researching. So that's really my after five kind of work.
Gotcha.
Stuff like
So
that.
you're not necessarily one of those people who gets up at 3:30 in the morning to like get their writing done and their
No, although
and their
that's
practice and everything.
although that's a secret dream of mine is to become, a 4 a.m. person. But I'm more of a wake up at 8 a.m. and then stay up until 12 or 1. So I guess I
Yep.
burned the midnight oil, so to speak. Although I'm always trying to kind of bring that, shift that to earlier. But, having been in music school for so long, I'm just so used to doing things later at night. And, being a musician, that's kind of part of it is things are late. Even if you don't want them to be, they're just things start at 8 or 9, 10. So you just kind of get used to it. But
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I've kind of tried to push that circadian rhythm back and back, and there's a point where it just won't go.
no.
It's
So
good to hear.
I'm just like, well, it's fine right now. I don't have to commute anywhere. So if I get up a little bit earlier, it's okay.
So are you teaching lessons and taking classes online right now, or how does that work?
Yeah. So at this moment, I'm not teaching so much, although I think that'll change in a couple of weeks. I'll have some students taking a class online. But yes, I'm taking classes virtually. And most of those classes right now for me in my doctorate are mostly just guitar lessons. So I take those virtually with my professor from the University of Georgia. But I've finished all of my other coursework. And so beyond that, I'm doing mostly research.
Gotcha.
So lots of reading and lots of writing, which are things that I enjoy. So it's been really fun to just really dig deeper into that part of being a student and a future scholar or current scholar, I guess.
Can I ask what the focus of your thesis is, or kind of what you're researching at the moment?
Yeah. So my research focus is on Black women composers for guitar, and specifically, I guess, the classical guitar. And so it's a lot of listening to their pieces, analyzing scores, researching about their lives and their other work, and compiling that into what will be a 80, 100-page document at some point.
That's awesome. And who are a couple names on your listening playlist that have come out of that research? Anybody that the average listener should pay attention to or check out?
Yeah. So I learned about Erilyn Wallen through my research, and also actually from one of my great friends, Jamie. He texted me one day and was like, "Have you heard of her?" And I was like, "No." And so I started to learn about her work and have fallen in love with it ever since. But she is a composer currently living in the UK. She's also a professor, and she's written a lot of works for guitar. I would say at least 10, which is a lot in my book. So there's her. Tanya Leone. She's also a living composer. I want to say that she lives in New York, or at least that's what I heard. Not sure if that's correct. But she's written 2 solo pieces for guitar and then several chamber works for guitar as well. And so those two are really amazing composers, and I think their work should obviously be played more.
Mm-hmm.
and
And
hope that it will be.
as part of the research, are you, playing excerpts from their works or kind of studying it on the instrument too, or?
Yeah, I'm definitely studying it, playing through them. I have plans to perform those works at some point, maybe not necessarily in the time that I'm going to finish this particular degree, but they will become a regular part of the repertoire that I perform when I go back to performing in front of people,
Very cool.
live
Which,
audiences.
who knows when that's going to be, but yeah.
Right, right. So it's just so I have some time, and it's been really cool to take this time to get to learn about other works that, I might not necessarily have had the time to learn or explore otherwise, because
Gotcha.
it's really easy to get on that oh, I have to perform, I can't learn anything new kind of cycle. So it's been
Hmm.
good for that.
So, like at any one moment, how many pieces of music are you juggling on the guitar?
Ooh, okay. So at any one moment, it could be as many as 10 to 15. Um, and juggling is probably a maybe not the right word, but
Hmm.
definitely at least thinking about those pieces. So some of those pieces, I don't have time to play 10 pieces every day, but at least probably 4 to 5. And so I will just rotate them day by day.
Mm,
And there are some pieces, if I'm really working on or don't know as well, or if I have a performance coming up for them, then I will play those pieces every day.
gotcha.
So right now I'm working on a concerto, and that's 20-ish minutes of music, and so that's really my focus. What I'm playing every single day.
Mm. Now, do you do any composing of your own at the moment, or is your focus mainly interpreting, um, the compositions of others, or?
Yeah, so my focus is mainly, as you said, interpreting the compositions of others, but it has been on my mind lately to write something. I don't know what that'll look like. I think uh, I it will look like guitar ensemble pieces
Hmm.
in the beginning, just because I really believe in guitar education and music education, and I would love for there to be more guitar ensemble pieces in the world. And so I think when I begin focusing on composing, that will be where I start, hopefully, and then just branching out into solo rep or other types of chamber music and things like that, and also other genres. I don't want to limit myself to only classical music. I want to explore, jazz, R&B, hip hop, all those other things, folk music.
Hmm. So, how did you? I was reading that you grew up in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and it sounded like you got your start in choral music and playing in band. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I'm from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is 30 minutes south of Nashville,
Hmm.
which is, country music USA, as people like to call it. So I grew up listening to a lot of just country music because it was around, and I grew up also in choir because my mother was a choir director at our church, and so I had to be in that, but I enjoyed it, which was great. And then in third grade, I joined the choir that was at my elementary school, and then I did that, and then I joined band in sixth grade, and I played saxophone for 4 years.
Hmm.
And then starting really in 10th grade in high school, that's when I really started focusing on the singing and choir. And then around high school is when I also started learning how to play guitar. So I've always been involved in music in some kind of way.
Hmm.
It's just, it's been great. I love it. So it's for me, it's awesome. And I went to university for my undergrad for choral music education, mainly because they didn't have a guitar ed program.
Mm.
And so, I was already a singer, vocalist. I enjoyed doing that. And so that made the most sense at the time.
Hmm. Do you play any pieces that are for choir and guitar, or some kind of mixture
I've never
of
done
those?
that, but I want to. But I've only seen maybe, or even know of only 4 or 5 pieces. And yeah, I just haven't found the right choir. I'll
Mm.
say that.
Hmm.
But it would be really, really fun, I think, to do that kind of collaboration.
Yeah, I've only done one, performed one piece like that, and because my background is not in choir or choral conducting at all, so I was just mainly it was just terrifying to know when the downbeat was exactly. But I remember the texture of it being just beautiful and like wow. Um, but so how did the guitar come into the mixture in high school? Were you playing steel string guitar, or was it classical guitar right from the beginning? Or
Yeah, so I want to say 3 or 4 years before I started taking lessons, my parents had bought me kind of a toy guitar for Christmas one year. And I am not the kind of person who does well learning things like that on their own. Like, there are some things that I can definitely teach myself. But when it comes to music, I like the structure of a teacher and lessons and that kind of learning. And so, yeah, I'd had that guitar and I had just always wanted to really learn how to play. And I don't know why it was that in high school, my mom suddenly was like, sure, I'll get you guitar lessons. But she did. And I remember I started guitar lessons my very first day of high school.
hmm.
And so that initially started out as like steel string, you know, just learning how to read music on the guitar, although it's the same as all the other things I'd done before. And learning how to strum chords and those types of things. And it wasn't really until probably I was 16 and I had gotten a different guitar teacher that I even like really learned what classical guitar was.
Hmm.
And so he introduced that to me. And it was around that time that I decided that I wanted to pursue music as a career in some kind of way. And so I knew that I would need to learn classical guitar if I wanted to major in guitar
Hmm.
in university. And so that's kind of the route that I ended up taking. But it ended up being the right choice. I really enjoy classical music and love playing the classical guitar. And so it was just kind of meant to be, I think.
And who were some of your teachers early on in undergrad?
So my first teacher in undergrad was Lily Afshar. And I believe she's still at the University of Memphis, but just an incredible performer, teacher. I learned so much from her. And then I did my master's at the University of Louisville with Stephen Mattingly. Again, another incredible teacher, performer, all around both great people. And so now I'm studying with Daniel Bolshoi at the University of Georgia. So those have been my university teachers. And then my teacher in high school, who really taught me so much about classical guitar, is Patrick Worley. And so, yeah, studying with all of them has really been a treat and a joy.
That's awesome. And was it a big transition in terms of, like were you playing any fingerstyle patterns or songs in high school, or was it like learning a completely different language on the instrument?
I would say it wasn't too different of a change. I mean, maybe it was, but it was just like, oh, this is what we're doing now. Okay, not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I remember too, I was really into like songwriting and trying to like write my own songs, and and I was like starting to learn fingerstyle patterns, but they hadn't really sunk in yet. So I think it was really easy for me to just like transition into classical and that be the way that I learned a lot of those kind of beginning fingerstyle guitar techniques.
Mm-hmm. Now, was it around this time, or when was it that you started the Margins Guitar Collective?
Yeah,
How
so
did that come about?
that was more recent. I started
Mm,
that in 2018, 2017,
gotcha.
2018.
Okay.
And that was more because I wanted to create a space in the guitar community where people who looked like me were at the front and center of the work and of the art. And I don't know if you or anyone who's listening to this might have noticed, but the classical guitar community skews male and mostly white.
Hmm.
And I began to notice that. I would go to camps and I would go to festivals, and no one else would look like me. and that's an issue. And it's not because people who look like me don't want to play the music. It's because the community hasn't been as welcoming and as inclusive as it should be. And so the Martian Guitar Collective for me is that space and is that opportunity to make sure that people of differing thoughts and opinions and identities have a space to feel heard, and their music is celebrated and represented and shared widely.
That's awesome. And how many other members or collaborators are there in the group?
Yeah, so I am the person who does most of the administrative work for that project and some of the playing. And there are about 10 collaborators at this point. And I'm always looking to grow and expand that. I want it to be really a community that will be in person, but also virtual. And so trying to figure out how to do that best is a great challenge, but it's one that I'm enjoying so far. So if people want to get involved, they can, become a collaborator, as you said. So they can perform the pieces that we've commissioned. They can write us a piece for us to perform. They can help with other things, editing videos, just being an advocate for this type of community and for this type of work.
And I'll definitely put a link in the description and at the end of the video, but where could people go to find out more about the collective?
Yeah, so marginsguitarcollective.com is the website, and we're also on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Margins Guitar Co.
And it sounds like it's a mixture of players and composers?
Yeah, a mixture of players and composers.
Gotcha.
Who are making music, trying to do some beautiful things.
Do you feel like that's a very recent discussion in the classical guitar community, or is it one that's been ongoing but just hasn't made it to the mainstream until recently?
I think it's some of both. I think there have been people in the guitar community who have tried to bring it up and no one's really listened to them. But, even still after the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I've seen so many guitarists and, guitar organizations finally saying that, we recognize the humanity of Black people. And now is the time for us to begin making sure that our community is a space that is welcoming of Black people. And all people of color as well. So I would say it's both. It's a conversation that's been happening, but it's really come to the mainstream in the last 2 months or so.
And what are some of the approaches that you've been reading about or been advocating for in the past few months, as far as from the audience side, but also from the education side and the performance side?
So I would say from the audience side, the one thing is when we're trying to expand our community to any new audiences, that you have to go to the audience. You have to go to the people where they are. You have to literally meet them at their meeting spaces and whatever that might look like. So that's one thing that I've been advocating for, is for people to just really get out of where they normally are and to go find the people and to share the music there. So for the audience perspective, that's what I think is really necessary. From the performer's perspective, it's important to include performers with various identities in your programming. And a lot of people I know, that's one of the more difficult or challenging things, only because it can take a long time to learn a new piece of music to play. I don't know about you, but it can sometimes be 6 months to a year before I really, really feel comfortable playing a piece a lot and for it to sound really good. So, but for performers, that's one thing that they can do, is to really, really have a diverse program, diverse in the identities of the composers represented there, but also just diverse in the sounds that they're making. A lot of times you'll go to a concert and it's very like one note in my opinion. Lots of romantic and neo-romantic, and that's it. And that music is beautiful. Yes, and I am never advocating that we shouldn't play those things. I'm just advocating for greater diversity in what we're hearing and for the sounds that are coming out.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So from the performer side, that's one thing, and then for educators and from the education side, it's really about creating opportunities. So does everyone in your sixth grades, in your music school or your music classes, do they have the opportunity to learn? Do they have an instrument? Can you help find an instrument? Is there someone in your community who can help come in and teach, everyone how to play the guitar? There are lots of barriers that have been set up, I think mostly intentionally, that help prohibit access to learning the guitar, and mainly probably any classical instrument, or like violin. And I know there are lots of barriers to learning all instruments, of all genres, and so you know deciding that you want to eliminate those barriers is probably one of the most important things that you can do. And it's difficult work. I have these conversations with people, and I think it can be very daunting because it feels so challenging. But that's okay. It is a lot of work, but it's work that is much needed. It is very important, and I think in the end it'll be well worth it. And it's generational work. It's not going to be work that we all see the benefits from in the next 10, 20 years. I think the real work we will see the rewards of that work probably, after we're no longer here. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing the work while we are here, because we will see some of those rewards now as well.
And those, those younger people who go on to be players or composers will directly benefit from that, obviously.
Right. It's interesting with the composer conversation as well. I took composition lessons once, and by once I mean I took them for a semester in my undergrad, and it didn't really vibe with me. The format and the style and the teacher, it just wasn't what I needed at that time, and so I just never thought I could be a composer. And at this point I was probably like 20 or 21, but if you're a 14 or 15-year-old, who in your life do you know that's a composer that we call composers? Right. I don't know that we do enough work in the broad music community to say that the person who might have made this beat composed it. That's, to me, that's a composer as well. And some people might not like that I just said that, and that's totally fine. We can talk about it. But they made a sound. They organized sound. They made something happen, and it sounded good. So those are composers too. And we have to celebrate everybody in that same way if, they're creating music.
Right. I think that's a really good point. It seems kind of like, how many hundreds or thousands of creators there are on Instagram, using Ableton Live or some kind of music production software. But that's somehow, that discussion is like, that's a very different thing. That's not, sitting down and arranging for classical instruments. Like, it's very disconnected somehow. Right.
And I guess part of that is the academia discussion. I don't know. I'm sure there are many classes in different universities that teach, beat composition. I don't know. But it's a discussion that I think is important, because there are a lot of people out there who are composing music, and we're just not really inviting them into the conversation. And they should be there, because they're doing some really awesome things. And I think if we want classical music to continue to exist, we're going to have to do some of that work. This community is going to have to really open up, or else it will not exist in the same way that it has for so long.
Right. It seems like the discussion about alternative venues is definitely part of the language, but not necessarily, at least from what I'm seeing on the internet, in terms of being more inclusive. It's just like, oh, we're not selling enough tickets, at our concert or recital hall, so we need to have a string quartet at, a jazz club or something like that, right? But it
Yeah.
doesn't. So I'm just curious about your perspective on that discussion. Performing in spaces that aren't traditional classical music venues.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a local orchestra here in Austin, and I was on their website. This was several months ago, reading just about like who's allowed in there and what their expectations are. And they expect for you not to clap during the middle of a piece. And they one of the other things too is they kind of had like dress code suggestions.
Mm,
It was weird. So it's like if you show up, we expect for you to look like this.
mm,
And like what does that say to someone who has never been to the symphony before? It's like, oh well, I have to also look a certain way. It's not enough that I can't eat or drink during the thing, or that I
right.
can't clap during the thing. I can't talk during it, but I have to look a certain way. Like that's exclusive.
Hmm.
That is in no way inclusive of a broader community of people. And so going to different spaces, I think, allows for there to be a conversation about inclusivity, like
Hmm.
who is allowed here. I think it's not perfect though, because someone pointed out to me that there are people who might not feel comfortable going into, say, a brewery,
Mm,
where a lot of new music things seem to happen in breweries now. It's very trendy, and it's not a bad thing, but there might be people in our communities who can't go into spaces where they serve alcohol,
right.
and that it's just like that inherently leaves them out. And if we don't provide the additional opportunity for that person to come see that same musical experience, well then we've really just excluded everyone.
Hmm.
So yes, I am for non-traditional venues, and I don't even know that we should think of, I mean, orchestra halls are traditional, but I think we need to really move away from that kind of wording and phrasing around it. It's just
Mm,
like, this is the orchestra, this is where they play, because it's big enough.
I
you
see.
know you can't I would love to fit a 100-piece orchestra in a jazz club, but then that would be the club, no one else would be
Right.
allowed in.
Right. No audience.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I think it's really thinking about like this space fits the group, and this other space fits the group as well, but everyone's allowed in all the time.
Hmm. And personally speaking, what are some of the venues that don't fit any kind of traditional model that you've played, classical guitar in?
Let me think. Well, I played. So I'm in a duo, and our name is Duo Charango, and we are a new music duo. We both play guitar, and so sometimes we both play electric guitar. Sometimes we both play classical guitar. Sometimes it's a mix. But we played in this space in February that was kind of like a co-working space,
Hmm.
but with like a restaurant attached, but that also had stores. So it was very interesting. Like on the one wall, it was like a clothing store and like a stationery store and someone's like private office. And then over here, there was this restaurant. So the whole time that we were playing, we could hear people like yelling orange juice and coffee in the background. But then there was just like this big open space and people were like co-working there.
Hmm.
And I don't think anyone would think of that as like a traditional music space, but it was a really, really cool space. And it was just open.
Hmm.
Anyone could come in, they could sit down. It wasn't closed off in any way. So I think that was like one of the more non-traditional or usual spaces that you would expect to hear any kind of music, let
Hmm.
alone like we were playing like this very drony electric guitar music then. So
I love
yeah,
it.
that was one of the more non-traditional spaces.
And so do you have? I imagine you have pieces that are commissioned for an electric guitar or an amplified guitar or some combination there.
Yeah. So we did a project last year called the Neoteric Guitar Project, where we commissioned three new works for our electric guitar duo from three different composers. And we were set to perform those in June, but that didn't happen. So we are figuring out a new premiere date. That was supposed to be October. That has now been rescheduled.
Mm-hmm.
So again, figuring it out. But that project has been our first kind of foray as a duo into bringing new repertoire for that instrumentation.
Mm.
But there are definitely some pieces out there already. And one of the things that, if the piece doesn't exist, well, yes, we create it, but a lot of composers also write, pieces with like open instrumentation. And so it's been really cool for us to get to explore and interpret that in that way.
Interesting. So I also find it fascinating that you talk about spaces that just fit the number of instruments on stage or the sound, and obviously, the classical guitar has this long history of no amplification and playing a certain way, and then in projecting, and then maybe some friction over amplifying it with a microphone, and now it seems like there are a lot of possibilities for most of the pieces that you've commissioned or composers that you've worked with. Are you performing, you know, in a concert hall, let's say, unamplified, or are you plugging in or using any kind of amplification?
Yeah, it really just depends on the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'm thinking that most of the pieces that I've commissioned, they do involve some type of amplification. Now that I think about it, but I'm really into like playing the electric guitar more. Like that's what I want to do more of. And so I think when I've been talking to a lot of collaborators, I'm like, please write me a piece for electric guitar. So it just so happens that it has to be amplified.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I think that's also a thing that more people are beginning to explore anyway, like amplified cello or amplified violin. And so it's on people's minds. And so it's just something that I've seen come.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with it. Like for me, it's not a huge deal to amplify my classical guitar. It doesn't sound the same, but that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, the tone, you won't be able to hear exactly every little part of my tone. But that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you get the big picture, the overall shape, and you can understand the piece in that way, then I'm okay with that. But there are definitely some people who are, very anti amplifying their classical guitar, and they have their reasons, and so that's fine too. But I try to be open to those different possibilities because, it does, or it can in some way extend and open up the possibilities of where you can play, as you were kind of saying. Like there's some places where the guitar would just be too quiet, especially if that space hasn't been treated for that kind of music, which is very, very soft music. It just wouldn't work. But if I can, amplify it and make the space my own, then that means that I can, be in a new space, but also hopefully bring in some new people.
That's a good point. Now, there's another project that I wanted to ask you about, which is called Trash Music. It has a mission of, the intersection of instruments and sustainability, but I was just hoping you could talk more about how that got started and what the mission is.
Yeah, so when I was living back in Athens, Georgia, where I was doing my coursework at UGA, I had this really awesome assistantship that was called Ideas for Creative Exploration. And it allowed for graduate students to basically explore interdisciplinary collaborative projects. And so during that time, and before that, I had become really, really interested in issues of like sustainability and environmental justice. And so I wanted to explore that. And I also remember reading an article about how, certain types of wood were under threat because we were just harvesting them for instruments. And I say this as someone who has a guitar, and I'm sure you do too, a handmade guitar that has this, really rare wood that will never exist if we don't do something about it. And so I wanted to, again, do my part in starting that conversation about, what are we doing as musicians and how can we affect change in something that seems like we don't really need to or have the space to, but we really do. And so I wanted to create music from trash. And so that's what we did. We literally made instruments. We called them trash instruments. And then I had a group of composers write pieces for those instruments. And then we had performances of the trash music.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So like one of the instruments, someone called like a huggable trash bag. And it was just it was a plastic bag and it had a bunch of trash in it. And, you could smash it, you could hug it, it would make all these different sounds. And it was really cool. And so they wrote a piece that included that. And so I just ended up saving a bunch of recycled materials and people that brought in things. And I was also awarded a grant by the Office of Sustainability at the University of Georgia to do the project because they thought it was cool. And I was like, yes. So that also helped with some of the cost and needs that associated, but most of it was instruments that we just made.
So these are not at all pre-existing or traditional instruments. These are like new things that have been created from trash.
Yes, literally. So I also collaborated. I collaborated with the composition students who were there, but I also collaborated with a group of students who were in an Art X class, which was like which is the class in the art department where they did like different kinds of explorations, and they were super open to it. And so I just brought the trash into their class one day and I was like, make something. And it was really interesting to see artists, work with sound. And even, in their class, they were working with sound too. But it was a really neat experience to like see all of that come together.
Right. I imagine they would have a whole different set of ideas as far as how to construct an instrument,
right? Yeah,
visually
yeah, it was. They were thinking of it more. It seemed like more from like a visual aesthetic lens, whereas the composers seemed to be thinking about it from like a more aural sound lens, and so it was really neat to see those two things come together. And so I want to keep doing the project. I don't know what it'll look like in future iterations. Although I do want a future iteration of it to be about food, and I want to call it Food Wrappers. And for it, so for it to be about food and food sustainability and like all of that kind of stuff too.
Because it's there's so much waste that is just part and parcel of all the different components of the groceries we buy and the food we eat.
And as musicians, like strings are disposable, guitar strings are disposable, reeds, they're disposable. It's like, what happens to those? And now there are companies who are recycling those materials, which is like really awesome, but I don't think that's a thing that many people are aware of. They just don't know about it. It's no one's fault. So I think as musicians, we have lots of more opportunities to talk about issues that, inspire us or that concern us. And it doesn't always have to be through a project, although that's how I've taken to talking about a lot of things that are important to me. I think you can just really be a person who talks about it, in your concerts or in your studio or to your friends. There are always opportunities for us to stand up for what we believe in, from the stage, but and not. So
you have a series of videos and a project called Women of Guitar, and I was hoping to ask about that too.
So I guess I could say I love YouTube. YouTube is cool. There's so many awesome things on there, and I don't see myself as like a vlogger type person, but I had always wanted to do something on YouTube besides just put up past recitals that I had done. And I wanted to challenge myself also to continue learning new music, because it can be really easy, as I said earlier, to get in the habit of just playing pieces you already know.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to challenge myself to learn them also faster. And so I thought, well, why not do a piece a week and put it on the internet? So that's how that kind of came about. And I think I had this idea in like December, which is right around the time when I moved. And so like a lot of things were happening at one time. But I managed to like start it and to work on it. And so, yeah, in my research about Black women composers for guitar, I also learned that there are just lots of other women and non-binary composers who have written works for guitar who have never had them recorded. And so I'll find the scores and I have no idea what they sound like. And so I wanted for this project to be a place where people are hearing works that I've never heard and that they've probably never heard as well. Because I've learned that that's a way that people learn about new music, is they hear it. Guitarists, we go to competitions and we hear a new piece, and then the next year at the same competition there are 10 people playing that same new piece, and a new piece is never going to get played if it's not heard. And I think, which is not always true, like people, someone has to start it. So I wanted to be the person who could start some of those. So that's where the project came from. It's ongoing. There have been obvious challenges to a lot of continuing and making sure that happens. But I'm really starting to get back into it and posting some more videos for that.
Cool.
So beyond, I wanted it to be like a 52 weeks project, but I just want it to be a project that I really keep doing until I run out of pieces. And there are an endless amount of pieces. So
I was going to say, how challenging a process has it been to, in a week, learn a brand new piece and polish it to the extent, to your satisfaction, to put up on YouTube?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a challenge, but I would say a lot of the pieces that I've chosen intentionally haven't been that long or that difficult. And mainly because I just give myself a week. So, it would be a really big challenge to learn, a 20-minute piece in a week, which I guess is possible. But if that was the only thing that I was doing, and, this, again, is a project that I'm doing in addition to all my other projects. And so I want to be realistic with myself about what I can do in that amount of time. But I've learned it has made me a better sight reader. It has made me a person who is finally being like, is that something I really need to focus on right now? It's really helped me prioritize the important things when learning a piece, which when you're at school, you have sometimes 2 years to learn a piece. So everything becomes a priority. But with this project, it's like getting the notes is a priority, getting the feel is a priority. And beyond that, everything else is just additional. It's a good addition. But as long as I can do that and let people know that I do this in a week, well, then it's fine.
And are all the composers currently living, or is it a mixture?
It's a mixture. Yeah, so some of the composers are living, some of them are not. I want to say most of the pieces that I've done have been so far living. Yeah. And then they might have passed away more recently.
And as far as the, just the textures and timbres that you're finding, who are a couple of the composers who are either challenging conceptions of the guitar as far as sound or, tone or timbre or influences in what people think of as a piece of music for the classical guitar?
You bring up a good point. I just thought about it. Most of the pieces that I've done so far have also been written by women who play guitar. And so they know how things work. They play the instrument and you play something from them and you're like, oh yeah, this sounds great. This is how it's supposed to work. So I haven't gotten to too many pieces yet where it's been like it's that kind of a challenge to really like figure out what they're asking you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, even still, it's been really fun to play those works and to learn about these people because you don't learn about them in music school.
Mm.
And whether or not it's the music school's obligation to teach you everything, we could probably have a different conversation about.
Right.
Although I think they could do more, and I will challenge them to do more. But learning about their work and learning about them as composers who are guitarists has just been really cool. So Annette Krusbrink, she is a guitar player. She's in a guitar duo, I want to say, as well. And she's written so many pieces for guitar, and she's probably one of my favorite composers. And she writes in a lot of different like sounds and textures and timbres that I think even the beginning-ish guitar player could play. Like she has a set of 15 etudes, and I think they're really wonderful teaching pieces. They're like 30. I've recorded a couple of them. They're like 30 seconds to a minute long, and they're not what you really would think of when you think of an etude. It's at least when you compare it to maybe like the Villalobos etudes or Regandi or something like that, which are more concert pieces, I guess you could say. But even thinking of like Soar, a lot of those Soar and Giuliani, like those are still really like for the younger students as well, or big or newer guitar players. So she has really taken a lot of those techniques that we don't often do in the beginning of our playing in our journey, and she's put them very much at the beginning.
Interesting.
So I'm thinking like pizzicato, with your thumb and stuff. Like I don't remember doing that for like the first 4 years of playing guitar, and here she is. It's in the first etude. It's Pitts is the very beginning. So yeah, it's like, and I guess because she's a guitar player, she maybe feels like she can do that. Whereas like someone who doesn't play guitar, I don't know how they would even know to put Pitts in the very beginning of a etude number 1 in their set of etudes.
Right.
So she's definitely one composer who I really, really enjoy, and who's really, I think, doing some really interesting things with music for the music that's shorter, or music for that's like beginning or intermediate guitarists.
I'll definitely have to check those out for sure. And,
yeah, I think she just recorded some, like all of them too, all of her etudes as well. So, because I found that I had purchased the music, but I had never heard them as well. Going on that, like I have no idea what this sounds like, but I'm going to try to play it.
Any of the composers that you featured that you've had contact with or that have reached out to you?
Yeah, there have been a few of the pieces that the videos just haven't been put up yet. But there is a composer who on Twitter, of all places, was like, hey, I'm in quarantine and I don't have anything to do. Who wants a piece? And I was like, sure, and like I'm just like, I'll do anything. Music and guitar related. People are like, do you want to do this project? So I'm like, sure. So, I commissioned her to write me a piece in, I think the title of the piece is Calm and Solemn. Because she was like, give me 2 words about like how you're feeling or what you want the piece to be about. And I was like, well, I want it to be calm and I'm feeling kind of solemn. And so that was the piece. And so, that piece should go up in a couple of weeks. And then I did a piece by Anna Brake, who I've also been working with. And I believe it's called Intrigued, and it's from her series of miniatures. And so I've had contact with her, obviously because we're collaborating on a different piece. But, I just tell people, I try to always be in contact with the people whose music I'm playing, if at all possible.
I'm really intrigued at just learning more about the guitar ensemble music that's being written now too, which I don't have a whole lot of experience with. kind of my entry point was a composer named Jörg Kindl.
Mhm.
That's his name, and there's a guitar program at a high school in here in Minneapolis that uses a lot of his music for like a classroom full of 30 kids playing guitar. So I was like, oh, who is this guy? And it turns out he's very active in the acoustic guitar community on Facebook, and but it seems like there's a lot of activity as far as ensemble playing now for the classical guitar.
Yeah, there is. I mean, if you think about it, that's how a lot of students are coming to the guitar now,
Mm-hmm.
is through their sixth grade guitar ensemble
Mm-hmm.
class, and which is beautiful. I think it gets many, many more people involved in the community and just learning about music in general. And so I work for an organization called Austin Classical Guitar, and there I work in the administrative side doing development.
Mm-hmm.
But they are an organization that has really helped a lot of the schools in Austin have, guitar ensemble classroom based education. And so we do a lot of work there around, ensemble pieces. And what do they look like? What do they sound like?
Mm-hmm.
What are the additional materials that people need in order to teach this piece? Because a lot of guitar teachers or a lot of teachers who are teaching guitar at their school were not guitarists. It's rare that someone who, like myself, plays guitar ends up going to school to get a music ed degree. It's usually that person gets the music ed degree and then lands a job at a school, and either they're like, I want to teach guitar, or the principal's like, you must teach guitar. And they're like, oh, okay, we got to figure this out. And so that has led to, I think, a lot of really new and innovative work around guitar ensemble music and around, classroom based guitar education.
Mm-hmm.
So it's popping up everywhere. I mean, I wish that, at my school in sixth grade, we had guitar class and we had guitar ensemble. Like, so cool. I mean, I've heard of elementary schools having guitar classes, which is just like, which is awesome. I mean, but it should be the norm. I think we're working towards it becoming the norm. It seems like a lot of other instruments people come to a lot earlier than they do the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why, but hopefully this will provide more opportunities for more students to come to the guitar earlier. And, it'll help with the pipeline issue, as a lot of people like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
The issue of there not being, or the issue or the perception of there not being a lot of people with more diverse identities in classical music. So this might help with that.
Mm-hmm. It's really cool that you've been involved with the program in Austin, which, to my understanding, has been kind of a direct model for a lot of the classrooms in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities. Like, Austin's doing this thing, and here's how they're doing it, and here's the material that they're using. So it's definitely on the map. But you're right. I certainly never had guitar, during the school day until eighth grade, when it was, the only opportunity for it was in jazz band, which was great. But before that, it was not an option. So to me, this is a very new discussion. But I think it's cool because it's such a ubiquitous instrument, like, and so relatively affordable at the lower end, probably compared to an oboe or bassoon or violin or something.
Right. I mean, the thing I love about the guitar is that everybody has a guitar story. I don't know if you've noticed it, but like, as soon as you tell someone that you play guitar, they also have to tell you that they either play guitar or that they know someone who played guitar or that they want to play guitar. Like, everybody just has a guitar story. I mean, sure, they probably have a piano story too, but you will find more people who have a guitar just at home than probably like any other instrument. And so the guitar has the opportunity to really connect with so many people. For so many reasons, like you mentioned, it's more affordable to start out. Like, you can play on a $100 guitar for a long time
Mm-hmm.
before you're like, oh, I want to step up. Whereas like, you know, if you get an $100 oboe, no one's really sure what's going to come out of that. I hope that oboist would agree. I could totally be wrong. But, you know, the guitar, it just has that ability. You know, you can go and sit around a campfire and, you know, you can sing and play at the same time with a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that with woodwinds, you know. And so it's awesome. And it's like we should be encouraging as many people as who want to play. We should be encouraging them and providing them with the necessary resources and skills to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that each of them want to become professional musicians like you or myself. But it does mean that we are a community that is welcoming of everyone and provides opportunities that allow for people to go the professional route, whatever that means for them, if that's what they want to do.
Right. I think that's a really good point. It's almost not it's almost missing the point to say either, you know, from an early age, you're in this for the game of being a professional musician when you graduate, or there's no access for you. It's like, it's part of the human experience too, to make music and play an instrument, you know, it seems important for its own sake.
It shouldn't really be about whether or not you want to do this as your primary job. It should just really be about, you know, do you enjoy it? And we hope that you enjoy it for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Because I know many people who have left the guitar because they haven't felt like there's space for them to make this their job. Hmm. And I would argue that maybe we've created that. We've created that lack of opportunity. Mm-hmm. We've made it a really insular community where only a few people have the access to succeed. And that's an issue. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if we're going to encourage more people to start, if we're going to build all of these guitar programs, well, we have to build a field for them to go into as well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there has to be space in non-traditional venues for the guitar to be there. You know, there have to be opportunities for the guitarist to play with choir. I mean, mm-hmm. orchestra plays with choir. Why not guitar? You know, we talked about a little bit earlier. You know, the field has to be open and available for anyone to come into as well.
Yeah. Any, I mean, this is a huge set of discussions and I would love to, you know, chat all day about it. Any projects that you're working on at the moment that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
I think we covered everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I'm working on all of those things in some kind of way. The one that, you know, I spend the most time doing and what I really am focusing on and hoping that really takes some more shape is the Martian Guitar Collective. I do want that to really become the space for new works to be commissioned, for new people to collaborate, and for new voices to be heard. And so if you or someone out there is interested in learning more, wants to join, help out, do anything, you know, please contact me at our website, email me, and we will talk about it. But
that sounds great.
Yeah, that's the project that I'm spending the most of my time doing, and what I really hope continues.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned it earlier, and I'll definitely, like I said, put a link in the video. But where is a good place on the web for people to go find out about your videos, your music, and also the Martian Guitar Collective?
Yeah, so my website is a great place for all of this, ciyadhwells.com, and I have many tabs for each of the different projects, and I also have like videos, and my videos are there, and I have a blog as well where I do some writing projects. People can subscribe to my newsletter there where I send updates about things that I'm working on or just things that I want to share. And then on my YouTube channel, you know, all of the videos are there. And then the Martian Guitar Collective website is where we can be contacted about those types of projects. And there's also a Martian Guitar Collective YouTube channel, which features some of the works that have been commissioned, and also just some pieces from the last concert that we did.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, this was fabulous. Thank you so much for chatting, Ciyadh, and yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Ben. I was really excited when you emailed me, and I was like, yes, of course, yes, yes,
Awesome.
anytime.
No,
So it's been really awesome.